today's we're going to have a little kind of talk about insecurity, right? In strange times. We're going to just roll with it all in divine order this morning. And I think what we're going to do is first just I want to share just a couple things with folks, and then we're going to open up the chat to kind of do this conversation. So things that are going on in folks' minds, things that they have questions about, things that they feel they're needing some kind of source of support or spiritual, guidance around. We're going to have just an open conversation here this morning, y'all. But first, I just really wanted to take the time to thank everyone. Many of you, or most of you, know that my father passed away on December 30th, quite suddenly, from COVID complications. And I have just been so blessed and so overwhelmed by all of your texts and phone calls and cards and Facebook messages and every means of communication I've received. And I got to tell you, that has really just lifted me and giving me so much comfort and love in this time. And so I thank you so much from the bottom of my heart. And that to me is just exactly what Reverend Kurt's message was intended to be. And even that song is that even in the darkest of times, we are so lifted by, God, but by each other, because we are all the expressions of the divine. And so that's the beauty, is that we sense and feel and know God through each other and through all the wonderful prayers that we give each other in these times, all the wonderful silent prayers that we don't even know about, that people are lifting us up both individually and collectively through all of this, energetic work that's being done, as we knew from old school, new thought, the prayer treatments. I mean, these are actual ways of healing that oftentimes we forget, that they're very deep and profound ways that we heal ourselves and heal each other. So thank you so much for all of that. And I do want to share with you all, one thing that I think is quite, again, apropos for this moment. This whole situation with COVID has been very odd for all of us, right? Our entire world has been at a standstill. Um, Everything has been interrupted in so many ways. So many families and lives and communities have been in a situation where they feel that they are destroyed. And so my situation, finding out about my father, and unfortunately, he was available. He was awake and he was doing okay. And as many of these things happened, just in the, we went to bed and I couldn't talk to him that day when we found out, and he was fine and he was Zooming with some other family that morning. By the next day, he had been moved to ICU. And then later that evening, he was put on a ventilator. So I didn't have the opportunity to speak with him. So that was really difficult for me. But, then about a day later, that's when we got the call that we were told that he was probably not going to make it through the day. And we had the opportunity to come to the hospital. Now, we couldn't see him, but we could go into the COVID ward and just see him outside the window. And immediately I sort of jumped in the car with my brother and decided we were going. And when we got close to the hospital, some fear started to set in, and I started to think. I was really concerned about my mother, who's also been dealing with some health challenges in this past year. And, I've been so concerned about her. Honestly, the thought of my father being a vulnerable person just really never crossed my mind. So, this was all just sort of a shock to me and to my entire family. In addition, when I got there, I thought, do I want to put myself in this situation? Do I want to potentially expose myself to then expose my mother, who I often caretake? And in that moment, my younger brother, Joe, who was with me, just said, we're here, we've been called here. And so we have to just trust God. And so before we entered that building, we just prayed together and prayed in a way that I felt I had never prayed before, but with this deep faith and appreciation and connection with him energetically, that we were so protected that we could walk in and, like the scripture, yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I fear no evil. And so we walked in there like we were superhuman, like we were good, we were fine, we were protected, and we were able to see my father. for the last time while he was still officially on this plane. And it was a very powerful time. And I think for me, what I've learned through all of this and what I share with you all is that I think I could have walked out of there, and I thought I was going to walk out of there with more fear, that I was going to then become this really super paranoid, anxious person about, protecting my mom, and about, and this and that, and what was going to happen, and where was I going to be, and maybe, be more paranoid about all of this. But what it did for me is that it actually made me more resolute in my faith. And it made me think how I and many of us have made COVID powerful when we don't think about it that way. But if we go back to truth principle, if we go back to the foundations of what our founders and what Jesus and many spiritual leaders from different traditions over time, we know that our minds are powerful and that our minds create a reality. Now, that doesn't mean that there is not something called COVID that's out there, of course. But what power are we giving it? And are we giving it more power than our God? So I think that's the question that we have to all ask ourselves in all of these times, whether it's what we see as our democracy being trampled, whether we see as these in certain times around racial issues or gender issues, or we see this, medical, science issues, whatever we see as sort of being the enemy, the fear, the situation, the threat. We have to then ask ourselves, are we making that more powerful than spirit? Are we making that more powerful than universal force? Are we making that more powerful than our collective energetic wisdom, than our collective divine wisdom? And if the answer is yes, then we have to take stock and we have to take a step back and go back to basics. And whatever that means for you all, whether it's prayer, praying with someone else, your prayer chaplain, silent unity, whether it's taking a time out in nature, whether it's, letting go of some things, doing some meditations to let go of some of this, fear. But I came out of this with this resolve that I am not going to walk in fear anymore. I know that I'm protected. You all are protected by divine wisdom. Trust your intuition. If you're feeling like you need to do something that may seem like it's unsafe, but you're being called to do that, like maybe see a family member from a distance that you hadn't seen, don't don't ignore those signs, because they're coming from that deep place of knowing that is telling you what you need to do to source and resource yourself. We are listening to science, but we are leading with spirit. And so I just want everyone to just absorb that, to integrate that today, to remember that we do not have to be afraid, that everything that is happening right now is for our best and our highest good. No matter what we see in the material realm, no matter what is happening around us, we are being lifted, we are being guided, we are being nurtured to something greater. Each of us in this time are being moved to something greater. So I'm going to open up the chat now and just see if there's any kind of questions we got going on here. Don't be shy, y'all. I guess while folks kind of wrap their brains around some questions they might want to ask, or just comments or anything of that nature, I want us to also know that where we are right now is totally okay. I've seen some friends on Facebook that, have gone on rants and then go back and apologize about it. And whereas I think that's a beautiful thing, that there's that moment of self-recognition and self-reflection. I do want to just invite us and remind us that we don't need to be critical of ourselves. That happens enough. We've gone through that enough in our life. Our world, around us criticizes us enough. So wherever you are, whatever you've done and however you've reacted, that's okay. And the fact that you can recognize, well, that wasn't really the, I missed the mark there, right? Like I wasn't completely 100% in truth at that moment. That's okay. Just reflect on, okay, how do I restore myself? How do I restore energetically what I just put out into the world? And A lot of it is by visioning. And I think, sometimes forget that our minds are so powerful, and that when we imagine, we are setting that course. So spend some time just thinking, what do you want to see in your life? What do you want to see in the world? And I mean, it's the time to like go big or go home, go big and go home, at the same time. Because when we're going big, we're going home, we're going to that spirit within, we're going to that deep connection. So what do you want to see? Get together with maybe other people, like-minded people, and just do this beautiful visualization of like, what do you see in the world? And know that that has power. So let's see. Oh boy, now everyone's a buzz in the chat. Where to begin?
Hey, Rev Christina, it's Kate, just wanted to quickly share something that we did in Soul School today that I think
Yay.
speaks to your point about what we want to see in the world. In light of everything that happened last week, I created a special lesson for today called Disagreeing in Peace. That it's okay for us to not agree with each other, to have differing opinions, but we can do that in peace. It helps us live and work together. And so we did a thing. I'm just going to back up a little bit here. We did a special little project with the peace sign. It says we can disagree in peace by talking and sharing together, listening, showing respect, and taking positive action. And so I wanted you to know that our kids in our program are thinking so thoughtfully about what went down last week, and how we can talk together and remember that each person is the Christ. And that's what we have to do, even looking at people we don't agree with, that we can see the God in them. Stop, take a breath, acknowledge what's going on, and release any anger or frustration that we have.
Yeah. Thank you, Kate. I appreciate that. And I think that's so wonderful that we're teaching our young people that now, that again, like you said, it's okay to feel those things. It's okay to feel them, to just allow them, to be honest with ourselves about what are we feeling right now? Because that's true, that's real. And so allowing that, because oftentimes we're taught, stuff it down, pretend it's not happening. Let me quickly transform it. Ooh, this feels uncomfortable. And I think sometimes just sitting in that, allowing for that healing and that release, becomes really powerful. So of course, with that, there's a lot of questions and comments in the chat about, how do you disagree? How do you see what's happening in the world and not have fear and not have anger or not have some kind of reaction? How do you even talk to people or engage with people that think so radically differently from what you believe? And I guess I'll just say this, is that again, it comes back to just that oneness principle. In the moment, you may not be able to access it, but then you have that opportunity to go back and with prayer and with meditation and maybe with your own words, if you go back to somebody and take and acknowledge that, maybe that was not my best and highest, but that's where I was, and here's how I'm going to do better. And so we have to just continue to hold that vision for people as well, and I don't want this to sound spiritually arrogant, because oftentimes we do that where we think, well, we're the elevated ones, right? We're the ones that know better. So let me pray for these people that don't know any better. But we're all caught in these loops of what we know. So oftentimes we don't know that what we don't know. So people have grown up in certain kinds of ideologies for years that have always been unquestioned. And so part of that is praying for people and engaging people in a way to just have that space for compassion and openness. Like, this is their best and highest good. This is what they know, but that doesn't mean that that is all that they know. And so we have to continue to hold a vision for people that their inner God will be able to then flourish, and their inner God and their spirit will be able to then have that dominion to be able to guide them. If we lose that hope for each other, even folks that you think are like the polar opposite of you, we've lost everything. We have to continue in that hope that everyone has that heart opening opportunity, that their hearts be opened to each other, that all of us can do that and we can get there, but we have to hold the high watch for everyone. And so I think that's what I think of when we have these moments where we engage. And I also want to say, I'm going to probably get on some watch list for saying this, but we have to remember is that we're in a media-driven culture, and whether we realize it or not, those messages permeate our subconscious, and oftentimes those messages are breeding conflict. And I got to say, those of you who are on Facebook and kind of watch things well, Facebook will amplify, and other social media, tools will amplify anything that's conflictual. So if I were to post something conflictual, oh boy, would I have a million likes and a million comments, and the algorithms will actually highlight that. But if I post it, I've done experiments on this to kind of test out, like I'm really curious about how some of this works. And if I post something about God, about Jesus, if I post something, it's like 2 likes, 3 likes. I mean, it's not amplified. We've got to ask ourselves, why? Why is that? So that is the challenge, is that we have to sort of learn how to have conversations with people that are in disagreement with us. And we also have to learn how to see past what we're being shown and told, because it's not always the story. And I have friends that think very differently than I do. For example, I have friends that are police officers who have taken a lot of the brunt of situations in recent times because of the issues that have been highlighted. And so to be able to have conversation with them and just openly listen to try to see what the perspective is has been really healing for me. And oftentimes I have found out people later on, after I've befriended them, had very different political inclinations than I did. And I was grateful for that, because had I known up front, I may have already sort of prejudged them and stepped back. And so that's, again, just really opening ourselves up to being uncomfortable about some of these things. Let's see. Kate, you feel free to jump in. I love the fact that you did. So any thoughts on that one, Kate? Anything come to mind? See anything in the chat you want to kind of spark you up there?
There's some beautiful discussion going on in the chat. People sharing about all different kinds of views and approaches to what's going on, and positive things that we can do. I know Terry brought up a wonderful thing about, hey, can we get churches in the area? Can we join with faith communities to, find the peaceful place, to find the connecting places as opposed to the dividing places?
I love it. And I think, that's some of the work that we as a community have ahead of us, is to try to be that voice, to be that space where we can have these deeper kinds of conversations, this transparency, this honesty. Our hashtags now, right? Our hashtag risk taker, hashtag deepest truth. And that's really what it comes down to, is really having to be risk takers in all of this. To claim something different from people. So for me, like, for example, I don't know if I've shared this before, but when things happen, we would say, oh, that's racist and he's racist. And I don't say that anymore, because I feel like I'm speaking against truth principle when I do that, because that is not who he or she is. That is not what they are. That is what they're doing in the world right now. That is perhaps an act of prejudice or a racist act or a behavior, but that is not the truth of their being. So I hold to that. I don't call people out of their names in that way, because I feel like I'm reaffirming that for them and for that energetically in the world. So, that I go to the behavior, not the person. I am, and we keep to the I am power. That person is a child of God and they are perfect and they are whole. And by golly, I'm going to hold to that. You may act cray cray. I don't care, but I'm going to still hold that vision for you, because I know that is what is there for you. So You know,
Yeah,
I
and I
think.
know Rose was writing in the chat about Black Lives Matter, right?
Mhm.
And how we saw this summer uh, that message unfolding. And there were people who did the positive thing, who marched, who spoke. And believe me, the things I was talking about with my kids today in Soul School weren't about shutting down, they were about talking, letting your point be known, but also showing respect and listening to what others have to say. And so those people this summer, the majority of them marched and did sit-ins and spoke their truths in powerful, peaceful ways. And yes, there were some who took their anger and their frustration and lashed out. But we saw that that lashing out didn't help, right? Didn't make it a better situation. So that idea of making sure that we honor people, if we honored people with equity and with support and made it possible for all people to live their best lives, what an amazing world it would be. And so that's, I think, where I'm pointing my eyes to, is that how can I be a part of the solution of getting to that place?
Absolutely. And it's not easy, and it's not a one day situation. You know, I know some people have put some other things in the chat. So again, we're exactly where we need to be in this journey. And you know, we lean on each other. You know, that was part of the song that VA shared. We don't walk this path alone. And so being able to figure out and listen to our intuition about what we need to do to be there for each other, whether it's through a phone call or a text or a card or standing up for something. You know, we're reading, Reverend Kurt and I are teaching a class right now, a prosperity class, Soulful Prosperity, and we just started this Tuesday, so it's still open if folks want to join in. We've got such a great group of folks that are assembled, and the first book that we're reading is The Soul of Money, and I love that there's a chapter in there where she talks about standing up, and that's part of us moving from this idea of fear and scarcity, like there's not enough in the world, there's not enough good people, there's not enough people that believe like us. There's not enough truth seekers. There's not enough people who are willing to stand up for justice and righteousness and equity and equality. There's not enough money in the world, you know. So all of these things that, whether we realize it or not, are part of our consciousness, our subconsciousness, and we operate in the world from that. So the books really talks about how do we move from that scarcity consciousness to a sufficiency consciousness, that we are enough, that there is enough in the world, that there is enough possibility, that there is enough hope, that there is enough of everything, that we don't have to fear, we don't have to hoard, we don't have to bunker down and protect ourselves always, that we can engage in the world from this place of openness and sharing. And one of the things she talks about is standing up. And again, it doesn't mean, for those folks who are called to be in, you know, marches or, you know, sit-ins, or to do some kind of like very formal organizing, kudos to you, that's great, that's one way. But there's so many ways that we can stand up for what we feel is creating more love in the world, because ultimately that's what Truth Principle is about. It's like, how am I embodying the concept of love? How am I loving right here and right now? How can I breed and create that as a viral potential in the world, this love thing? And so, you know, asking ourselves, what does that mean? And it's going to look different for everyone, but that's the power that we have in these uncertain times, is to stand up, to take action, and to be able to operate our principles. So feet to faith, you know, walking it, talking it, being it. That's what we're called to do. And that is when spirit is like kicking in on overdrive, and the blessings that you will have. Oh my Lord, the blessings that you will have when you allow that, you cannot even begin to imagine. So that's what I want to invite everyone to today. I want to thank everyone for the questions, and, you know, and their thoughts and their comments and all of that good stuff. And I'm sorry if we didn't get to everything that maybe people commented on, but really feel free. If I would love to engage folks, see if you want to private message me or email me, I'm happy to talk with you about any of these subjects. So with that said, I'm going to just take this into a time of brief meditation, and then we can continue on with the service. So thank you, everyone.
Reading these comments, thank you, Reverend Christina. And I was following along and reading the comments, and so many people are reflecting what I too have felt this week. A lot of pain and anxiety about things and worry. And I found my edges were sharpening, my corners, my edges. And every time I would read a news article or turn on the TV or something. And there's a song that we sing every week in this church and in many, many churches that is at the end of the service, and we'll do it later today, that says, "Let there be peace on earth." But this next sentence is what resonates with me so much, is "Let it begin with me." Let the peace begin with me. And I had to ask myself, how do I do that? Because my edges are forming, they're sharpening, and I want to lash out at some people, relatives or distant friends, or people who are saying things that are the opposite of what I feel. And I wrote a song several years ago, 3 or 4 years ago, and I've actually never shared this song in a church before. For whatever reason, it just hadn't found its place. Today, I share it with you because it is how I found my peace throughout this week. And I hope that as we all ask these questions and look for answers, what can I do? What can we do? I'm worried about this. We can look for the peace within. And the way I do that is as I soften my edges and I soften my heart. Soften my heart, let love shine through. Soften my mind, my spirit too. Soften my thoughts right from the start. Soften my words, soften my soul, soften my heart. When I'm feeling angry or unkind, when impatience builds up in my mind, when there's too much chaos in my day, I just stop, take a breath, and pray. Soften my heart, let love shine through. Soften my mind, my spirit too. Soften my thoughts right from the start. Soften my words, soften my soul, soften my heart. As we prepare for meditation, we can just think of these words deeply and how they can resonate inside of us individually. Soften my heart, let love shine through. Soften my mind, my spirit too. Soften my thoughts right from the start. Soften my words, soften my soul, soften my heart.
We just breathe in this beautifully amazing song. We breathe in this beautiful message of softening our heart, of opening up, of listening, of allowing, of being. So in this sacred space, we just breathe into that right now. Take some beautiful, deep cleansing breaths and just allow those lyrics to really rest in the corners of your soul. Allow them to take up residence there so deeply and root themselves in so that we understand that we feel that we know that we become that opening, that softening, that heart that is ready to send its energy into the world. It is ready to envelope ourselves and each other in that saving grace, in that beauty, in that wholeness. Feel it wash over you right now. Know that it is yours and it has always been yours, that this is the gift of the universe to you. No matter what you have done or haven't done or have yet to do, this is the grace of God, the love that you are endowed with as a child of the holy. You are holy and you have access to that power and that wisdom at every moment in time. And that opening starts with that heart just opening so deeply, ready to just see other people in their light, not in their darkness. See them in their light, see them in their perfection. We open ourselves to that compassion and that knowing that perhaps some folks have always known just this idea of fear, this idea of lashing out at others, this idea of criticizing others, because they too have been part of that vicious cycle. Maybe see them as children, those that have hurt and been hurt, words that have been thrown upon them, circumstances of familial and community situations that have been thrown upon them. And so they have learned these behaviors as a way to protect themselves and a way to see themselves as having power in a world where they feel powerlessness, but they have forgotten who they are. So we have compassion for them, and the people that we speak about are parts of ourselves as well, who we've forgotten who we are. So in this space, we open ourselves up to remember deeply, profoundly, unequivocally who we are. And we, beautiful people, are love expressed. Love expressing we are. And we give thanks for that. And we say, so it is, let it be. Amen.
Soften my heart, let love shine through. Soften my mind, my spirit too. Soften my thoughts right from the start. Soften my words, soften my soul, soften my heart. Soften my words, soften my soul, soften my heart. Soften my words, soften my soul, soften my heart.
Hey, thanks for watching this YouTube video. If Unity's message of positive spiritual living resonates with you, I hope you'll subscribe to our channel so you can stay up to date on other lessons as we post them. Also, if you're able to support us financially in the work that we do in the world, Please check below for contact information. You can visit our website, find more about what programming we offer, as well as how to give. Blessings.